So the first Yuk Yuk's, as I understand it, was way back in 1976?
Yes, 1976 in the basement of a community center. It couldn't have been, oh, and only one night a week, Wednesday, the worst night in show business. Everybody, of course, predicted that it would just fail. Nobody was doing stand-up comedy at that point, but I was, and it worked.
And so it expanded? You eventually had a chain of Yuk Yuk's across the country?
It took 2 years to get to that point, but every Wednesday night we would do this show, and it would be all these people who were young and personal in their comedy. It was a very different kind of, it was a sea change, actually, in the kind of comedy that was being done.
You having a good time? Yeah. Oh, okay. Did you get your $2 worth yet? No? Okay, wait, you will.
Whole time I was married, I never once worried about cheating on my wife, because I figure, let's be honest, I married the only woman on the whole planet that's ever wanted to sleep with me.
And these people always have the same defense, don't they?
Guns don't kill people. People kill people.
Same guy walks around going, men don't make women pregnant, penises make women pregnant.
So 45 years or so. I mean,
48 years.
48 years, that's a long time. A lot of people have been on your stages.
Yeah.
I want to mention some names and just tell me, you know, what you think or some reflections on them, but people who have been on Yuk Yuk stages. Norm Macdonald.
Norm was such a great comic. He was really a comic's comic. And the thing that's really interesting about Norm is he was fully formed when he went on stage, and that's not usually the case. Usually it takes years before a comic can call himself professional.
Howie Mandel.
I loved Howie from the get-go, and here's why. Howie is shameless, and his shamelessness seemed to be a real development in what we see ourselves as Canadians. Canadians generally, certainly at that time in the 70s, and even still, we see ourselves as being kind of polite, kind of reserved. And he would come on in a diaper and just, you know, scream at the audience. And it was so liberating to see that.
I said a fee, fi, fo, fum. I wish I was a bongo drum. Bum, 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 bum.
Jim Carrey?
So Jim started out as an impressionist. Now, I'm not a huge fan of impressionists, and I didn't understand why a 17-year-old kid would want to be Rich Little. We were looking for Lenny Bruce. We were looking for the next George Carlin. We weren't looking for a Vegas-style act. But I couldn't deny the response that the audience was giving him, standing ovations and everything. There were huge lineups whenever we would advertise that he would be at the club, and he was still in his infancy in a sense. So I like what Jim did when he moved to Los Angeles. He broadened out his act. I mean, he's certainly one of our most illustrious alumni.
When you think of the great comics, and you've seen a lot of them, and you compare them to the comics that aren't so great, are there certain traits that distinguish the great from the not so great?
Well, the first thing is writing. I worship at the altar of great writing. And I think if you take a look at any comic that you think is absolutely superior in every way, it all starts with writing. Now let me contradict that and say that all comedy begins with character. So when somebody's on stage, they have a certain essence, a character essence that defines them. It's why Jack Benny could just do this and get huge laughs, because everybody knew what that meant. So the same thing is true. I call it a comic flaw. It's something that somebody would have in their act, a way that they would behave, which in real life would be completely obnoxious and you wouldn't want to spend any time with them, but on stage, exaggerated and set up with the frame of a stage, it becomes something really funny and really great.
I mean, I think there's no art form that's tougher than stand-up comedy. You know, you can be a musician and have, like, the music you're playing almost hide behind that. Theater, you're reading somebody else's lines. But improv and stand-up, it's just you up there in front of an audience, and when you die, everybody can tell instantly.
Well, this is why I'm drawn to it, because I really am a very staunch individualist in many, many ways, and the fact that you're on stage alone with nobody to blame and nobody to thank gives it a purity of vision that I really adore. And remember, I did this myself for 20 years.
It doesn't really offend you at all. No, okay. So that if I said to you the C word, you mean like in what a is that what you mean? See, I could have asked other more embarrassing questions. But it's true. I mean, I don't like words like or oh, I don't like that. I'm a romantic.
So I love the idea of being able to say what I wanted to say when I wanted to say it. That's why we've never believed in censorship at my clubs.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a moment. You famously or infamously, you don't believe in censorship, but is there a line that you would not allow one of your comics to cross?
Absolutely not.
So a comic could come up here on amateur night and make a joke about the Holocaust?
Sure. Of course. Well, you're forgetting the fact that, I don't know when it was, but we did a festival of Holocaust jokes very early on.
I did not know that. Are you serious?
Yeah, it's not exactly a famous thing. But sick humor is what you need for a sick society, for a sick culture. And I do believe that the culture we live in is kind of sick. And the only response to it is to own that sickness.
And so what if the comedy seemed to be hateful or like made fun of people who were sitting here and made them uncomfortable?
You're talking about my act now. It all depends on the audience laughing. If the audience doesn't laugh, then it doesn't go on stage for very long. We wouldn't promote somebody who didn't get laughs. The audience does not come here to hate. The audience comes here to laugh. So, the audience has the ability to censor the acts by either not laughing or laughing. And if they're laughing, it's probably within the realm of acceptability.
So Jerry Seinfeld has recently been saying that the left is destroying or has destroyed comedy. He talks about PC crap. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't find that it's ruined comedy because I'm doing exactly the same thing I've been doing for the last 48 years, but I work on a really nice small scale. It's really not that hard for me to sell 200 seats a night in my clubs. I'm going to find 200 people a night that really don't care about being, precisely not hurting anybody's feelings, because that's not really what comedy is all about. So what Jerry is talking about, of course, are much bigger concerts and things like that. But there's always been censorship. There's always been a problem. It's just that the targets have changed. When I first opened up, 1976, 1978, people were appalled and would leave. A third of the audience would leave because of the language. It wasn't the topics. It was the language, 4-letter words, never heard before on a Canadian stage, and repetitive over and over and over and over again.
And the other thing is, in a pre-internet era, pre-cable TV era, there are probably people in that audience who never heard those words, right? Or at least not in the same way.
Well, they didn't hear them in church, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And then after that sort of passed and people kind of started to accept it and we found our audience, for a while there was a real feminist backlash against what we did because a lot of the material are guys standing up there and telling everybody why their last relationship failed and therefore they hate women. So they thought that was completely wrong. We didn't care, we went ahead with it. But I had pickets outside, feminists for a healthy humor. Well, if you know anything about humor, it doesn't come from a healthy place, not really. And then that kind of went away. And now the flashpoint is race. And you can't say anything racial. It's very difficult. And there's all kinds of rules. You can talk about your own race, that's perfectly fine, but you can't talk about anybody else's.
And how do you feel about that?
Well, we still let anybody talk about what they want to. But here's how the censorship does fit in. You can do anything you want at Yuck Yucks. Oh, that's great. So you'll perform for $200 and you'll walk away with 200 fans. But that's not really what the game is all about. The game is about becoming rich and famous. And if you can't do that act on television, at festivals, then why are you developing material that's just going to sit there and can only be used in clubs? Mm-hmm. So I find that the comics are more likely to self-censor than to be censored.
It's actually campaign season. It's just going around campaigning, make sure everybody remembers to vote for me, Black Trudeau. What are all the good things I did for this country, like legalize weed, and that's it? That's it! It's got legalized weed to f the country up. Well, you know what, though? If you think about it politically, if you're about to f the country up, wouldn't you legalize weed first? Yeah. See, I'm about to do some shit to state this.
So you get a lot of people in here tonight, for example, who are kind of new to comedy. Does it energize you? Does it dismay you? How do you feel hanging out with young people wanting to get into this business?
Well, in some ways, it's the most exciting part Do I really need to see Russell Peters and tell him how to do a joke? I don't think so. But it's really gratifying to be able to watch people just try to find their voice and stumble and fall and pick themselves up again and try something a little different. I love that part. And I think over the next year, you will see the number of bookings you get from us improve and expand exponentially. All right? Because I can see what's going on. I don't think you're going to get a lot of corporates with with the drug material. I mean, or you know, those companies, they'd be interesting. If we could find a company that would book you to do good drug material, boy, I'd like to work for that company. But I also have to say, there have never been so many comics. Never been so many comics around. There are now, I'd say, 2,000 in Toronto alone. Everything from amateurs all the way up to professionals.
What's that all about? Why?
I don't know. You know, in the 80s, everybody had a film script, right? Everybody wrote a film script. They had it in their drawer. And if you dared say, you know, I like film scripts, they would give it to you to read, and you'd have to read it. Well, now it's not a film script anymore. Now it's stand-up. There's some really good reasons. One is there's no barrier to entry. You want to go on, you just go to a comedy club and say, hi, when's your amateur night? I'd like to go on, and they put you on. That's not true in anything in show business generally, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big reason why.
Let's talk about the business of comedy for a moment.
Sure.
Amazing to me, the Yuck Yucks has survived this long, thrived perhaps. You tell me. What is the secret to your success in business?
Well, I think part of it is we were just first. And we were first for so long because nobody wanted to get into this. It was seen by most show business people as a really grotty, low-class thing to do. And so it took a long time before we had any competitors. And because of that, we built up a reputation.
What do you hope the legacy of Yuck Yucks is, the brand awareness? When people hear Yuck Yucks, what do you want them to think?
I want them to think that this is stand-up comedy done right. And there's a lot of things you do to make it happen right, like the room is kind of perfect. In fact, I always joke to my franchisees, my potential franchisees, if you build the room properly, you won't be able to do anything else but do stand-up comedy. Because can you imagine having dinner? It's a dark room with no windows. Everything is directed towards the stage. That's really important. The ceiling is nice and low. That's important because it creates intimacy. Look how close the chairs are to each other. People are practically sitting on each other's laps, which is a different kind of club. But that's really important because you don't laugh and the world laughs with you. So you want to have, it's like kindling. Somebody laughs, everybody's around you, they laugh too. The chairs, not too comfortable. Don't want them to be too comfortable. You want people leaning forward, not leaning back. We once had a club where we kind of inherited big tub chairs like you would see on a cruise ship, and it didn't work. You could actually tell the difference in the amount of laughter that came. We got rid of those chairs. We put in, these kinds of chairs, and yeah, you got more laughs. The sound has to be perfect. This is ultimately what they're paying for.
I mean, you talk about this venue like a musician would talk about a concert hall. Like, it's really interesting, your perspective on that. But was it 48 years, you said?
Yes.
A lot of people are discovering comics now on Instagram. And some of those comics can just leapfrog clubs, presumably, and festivals, and just book a place on their own based on Instagram fame.
How long will that last for them?
I don't know.
That's the problem. Yes, they'll be able to do that once, twice, but they're one-hit wonders. And because they don't have the ballast to back it up and the experience to back it up, they're not going to be in the business for a very long time. And you can see this happening all the time. Podcast people or internet people who are comics, they sell out a room, their fans come, and then their fans are horribly disappointed because they can't do what they do on TikTok live. And if they try something else, they don't have the experience to do it. So it kind of falls apart. There's just no reason why anybody would want to do this unless they had a career that would last 30, 40 years. That's what you're looking to do. You're looking to do this for the rest of your life.
Well, it's been an extraordinary achievement, and as I say, a well-known Canadian brand that's been going on for a long time. Really nice speaking with you.
And with you, Ian.